Okay, so our next topic of conversation is on doing a migration. So a number of you guys had said you were still on Big Man 2007, so let's go ahead and talk about the migration over. Won't take very long to do that. So the first thing is that with Big Man 2007, it's not an in-place upgrade like I just showed you. So with Big Man 2012, RTM to SP1 is an in-place thing. But for Big Man 2007 to Big Man 2012 or 2012 SP1, it's a side-by-side. There is no such thing as an in-place upgrade from old to new version. Well, actually, there is. It's called a wipe and load, but that doesn't get you retaining any of your old data. So one of my top customers actually did that. He didn't have another set of hardware. And he said, I don't really have a 5500, 5700. That I don't really have much of. I don't have enough of those whole objects that I really care about. So he said, I'm going to go ahead and do a wipe and load scenario, which he did, and that's fine. So that's certainly a possibility for you. But most people will want to keep their old infrastructure because they have stuff there they want to keep and they want to migrate over. So they don't want to do a wipe and load scenario. So what you would do is have your 2007 environment. So your primary side, your SQL Server, your MP, VPs, your subs, all the other site system roles that you have in 2007. You already got that up and running. It's been running for years. You're all good. Now, our caveat is we only upgrade from SP2, so only migrate. So this is Big Man 2007 SP2. We don't care about the R2 and R3 designators the signature does. If you're running R3, then you have to run SP2. The R3 only ran on top of SP2. So it's SP2 we're looking for. So that was 6487.2000 was the build number you're looking for. So 4.00.6487.2000 was the build number. I'll show you 5.007D804.1000. So from there, have your site already up and running the way you want. For the most part, you're going to stand up a brand new infrastructure in 2012, and you have generally the same. Oops, I'm trying to talk and write at the same time. Can't do a DP and MP in one line. Have the same site system roles: MP, DP, sub, SRS. For the most part, it's all the same site system roles. The one site system role we got rid of is a RP, so we no longer have a reporting point in 2012. It's now a SRS, so we call it an RSP. So in our code, we call it an RSP, a reporting services point, which is based on SRS, as opposed to the old web reporting solution. That's the only role we really got rid of from 2007. All the rest of the roles are still there. So you're going to go ahead and have duplicate infrastructure set up with all the appropriate site roles you want. And then you're going to go ahead and start your migration process. So I don't have a 2007 image on this laptop. The hard drive's not big enough, so I'd have to delete some other images I need to use for today. So I'm going to do a migration from 2012 SP1 to 2012 SP1. The process is exactly the same. So you're going to see what you need to do.
Is it better to upgrade to SP1 first and then do the migration, or
Yes. So if you're on 2007, then I would definitely go ahead and upgrade my 2012 environment to SP1 first, and I'll tell you why. There's something specific in the upgrade and the migration process that will be a lot better for you in SP1. So yeah, I would certainly, if I didn't already have a 2012 implementation, I would go ahead and implement SP1 right away in a clean environment. Or if you're 2012, go ahead and upgrade to SP1. Yes. So again, in my environment, I don't have a 2007. It's going to look almost exactly the same. I'll show you a couple differences. So we can migrate from 2007 SP2 or 2012 SP1. Those are the two different platforms we can migrate from now over to SP1. You could also migrate 2007 SP2 to 2012 RTM if you wanted to. But again, there's no reason to still be running RTM if you want to be SP1. We do not support migration from 2012 RTM. That can't be a source. That can't be your source It can be a destination, but it can't be your source of information. So like, that's your source or that's your source. So 2012 SP1 to SP1. So the cool thing is now with our service pack 1 is that a lot of you guys, I'm running out of whiteboard space. A lot of you guys, is there any, there's a little bit over here. It's harder for you guys over there to see, that's what I'm trying to say in the middle a little bit, but everybody, not a lot of you guys, everybody has this great thing called a lab. And your lab looks just like production. So exact number, operating systems, and type of installs, and everything else. So as you guys are in your lab, you have a primary site, you got your SQL, and all the different roles that match production. So you're in here in your lab environment, and you're creating your packages, you're creating your advertisements, your collections, etc. You create all these things, you stage them all over here, and you want to get them over to production. Well, today, you have to just create them there, and you have to recreate them over here. With 2012, with RTM, you can do an export of objects from your lab environment, and then import those same objects over into production without having to recreate everything. There were limitations to export, import, it didn't get all your objects, it would lose some dependency relationships between objects and so on. So not the best solution. Now, with SP1, you can take all these things you create in your SP1 lab and you can migrate them over to your production environment. All the objects can be migrated over, and we keep all the relationships, dependencies, and so on from your objects. So it's a much, much better environment for moving from your lab environment to your production environment. So you can really now stage things and test them out and verify in lab and just directly migrate them over. And that's what I'll show you here. So my environment, I'm going to do SP1 to SP1. It'll work, again, almost exactly the same as it's a 2007 to SP1 or to 2012 migration. So okay, so that's my scenario for you.
Presumably that will also work to set up the lab environment? Like also migrating the production environment?
The opposite direction? Sure. I can't believe you want to do that because your lab is already there and it's already pristine.
So, if you don't have a lab.
I don't want to hear this out loud.
Okay.
No. Yes, you could. You certainly could do that. And as we'll see as we go through here, there's only one place where we modify your source database, and you just wouldn't do that. That one thing. Other than that, it's just a read-only operation. So you can redo your migration as many times as you want to, from different sources, different destinations, and so on. Okay, so in my environment, my source site, which for those of you guys, it could be your lab, is 2012 SP1, or it could be your 2007 SP2 site, is listed here as PR2. So PR2 is going to be my source site. And in my case, you can see it's site PR2, and it is an SP1 site. But again, it will work exactly the same if this said PR2 and it was 6487 for my that's 2007 SP2 site. I, again, just don't have enough disk space here to have all those images running at the same time. So, and this one has very, very small number of objects. If you guys go to MMS, we'll have a hands-on lab there migrating from 2007 over, and we'll have a 2007 SP2 site that's got like 90 objects and clients, and we'll do the whole thing from start to finish. But you'll see the gist of things in here. That's my source site. My target site is going to be primary 1. And primary 1 is just a different snapshot of the images we were just using. And you can see that it is MCM is my target site, and again, it's SP1. But again, if you're running on RTM code, it could be 2007 SP2 to 2012 RTM, which then again would be 7711. You can do that. You just can't migrate from RTM to RTM, or RTM to anywhere. So on 2007 up or 2012 SP1 up. All right. So the first thing you do for migration is you go to the migration node in the administration workspace, and this presents to you a dashboard. The dashboard shows you your migration process. The first thing it shows you is what your source site information is. In this case, it's nothing. We've not designated who our source is, but we'll fill that in momentarily. for that source environment, how many objects do you have that you can migrate over? And again, we have nothing here to not configure this. And then how many clients are in your source site, and what the status of client migrations over from 2007 to 2012. And this, again, is all blank. We haven't specified our source. We just don't magically go pick things for you. So you would just go to the migration node and go to specify source hierarchy up on the ribbon, or you can, whenever I do ribbon, you can always right-click as well. And this brings up this dialog. What you do is you specify the NetBIOS name or FQDN of your source site server. In my case, that's going to be primary 2. Primary 2. You specify your FQDN or NetBIOS name, either one. Then we have to specify 2 accounts. So we use one account to access WMI, and then we have an account that we use to access SQL Server. So what's going to happen is that your ConfigNet 2012 site server is going to reach across the network to your 2007 site server, which is in my case 2012 SP1. We're going to query WMI, and we're going to query your ConfigNet site database. So we're going to do that to find out what your site looks like, what your hierarchy looks like, all the objects you have, how many clients you have, and what can be migrated. So you have to specify accounts that can be used to access from 2012 to 2007 to get to the SMS provider, as well as get to SQL Server. And you can see that you have options of a specific user account or your computer account. So if your computer account has appropriate valid rights to go and read from WMI and read from the site database, then that works great, and you have to worry about specifying user accounts and modifying passwords and so on. Otherwise, if that's not the case, in my case it won't work, I have to specify a user account. So we'll go ahead and specify a user account as our source. So set new account. For my account, I'll go ahead and browse Active Directory, and I'm just going to use my administrator account because I know it has rights. So we browse it from AD, and then we go ahead and specify our password. Now at this point in time, all we're doing is validating that I type the same password in those 2 boxes the same. So I have the same password specified. So we're not verifying it's the correct password. So to verify that, you hit the verify button here. The verify button will let you go out there and verify the credential you supplied. Now the first one we're going to is WMI, so we'll go to WMI. And then you specify the computer name here is the SMS provider location. So what computer in your source site has the SMS provider installed on it? And by default, from your site server, we recommend you move it to your SQL server, unless your SQL server is clustered, and then you can't put it on your SQL server because we don't let the provider be clustered. So there could be a third computer on your network. So you have to know where your provider is and specify that computer name. And then you specify a namespace you want to go verify. And this would be the namespace you want to go to, root/SMS. That's our namespace. If you want to verify, we can get to our namespace for WMI. So specify those parameters, and then just click test connection. And if everything works correctly, it'll come back and say the connection was verified successfully. That means I have an account that I can get to that SMS provider and get that namespace. So I should be able to read what I need to read from there. We also want to validate SQL Server, or get to SQL Server, so we can verify that. And I'll try that same account. So this is the computer that has SQL Server installed on it. This is your instance. In my case, I'm using the default instance, so I leave it blank. And then this is the database that you want us to test. Master is okay, but we're really going to read from the config manager database. So you go ahead and punch in the database name for your config manager database. So in ConfigMan 2007, it's SMS_PR2. In ConfigMan 2012, we don't use SMS anymore. We by default use CM _ and then your site code. But you may change the name of your database, so when you created it. And just verify that the account will work for that connection as well. So if that's all great, which it is in this case, you click OK, and now we're saying that we're going to use the same account for both SQL Server and the SMS provider. So we use one account to do both. You can use different accounts if you want to. Computer account for one, user account for a different one, 2 different user accounts, or the same account. Then down at the very bottom, you have this checkbox. That checkbox is only there in Service Pack 1. If you're running the RTM version of the product, this checkbox is not there. It's actually a ribbon action in the migration page, and I'll show you where that sits later on. In Service Pack 1 is sitting here, and RTM, that's not there. It's a ribbon action. You have to enable that separately. So I'm going to go ahead and enable this. And what the shared distribution points allow you to do is to allow a ConfigMan 2012 client to go ahead and access your ConfigMan 2007 distribution point to get the binary files for packages it's trying to install. So it's trying to run a patch, they can go get that patch from over here, as long as you migrate that patch package over here. The definition, the deployment would be migrated over, but the actual content would sit over here in the 2007 DP. That allows both client versions to get content from the same DP. And then later on, you can take this DP and you can upgrade it so it becomes a 2012 DP, keeping all the content intact, so you don't have to redistribute it to across the wire to a DP. So very, very cool. So if you want to do that, you go ahead and enable shared distribution points. We don't do that by default because it's an all or nothing. We take all of your DPs from 2007 and we share all of them with 2012. You can't state, I just want to take these 5 of my 100 DPs. We get all of them or we get none of them. And now I have 1 DP in my source site, so I'll go ahead and say that. And now we kick off what's called the data gathering process. The data gathering process is where your source site is doing that WMI query and the SQL Server query to find out what your source hierarchy looks like, the number of objects you have, the number of clients you have, and it's going to populate your destination site with just descriptions or names of all those different objects, so that you can then migrate them over if you choose to. So it stopped here just because it's zoomed in, but it's done. So I might unzoom. We'll see this done, that process. MSIP, so internally we manage 300,000 clients with Configuration Manager at Microsoft. And this data gathering process took about 7 minutes to go through for an environment that manages 300,000 clients. I don't know how many collections and packages and advertisements and all that stuff they did. Not that they have, but. Okay, so now we've done that. Now you see your dashboard. It tells me what my top level site server is. In this case, it's PR2, or primary 2. And it's only one site in the hierarchy, so it's not a central site with child sites below it. It tells me I only have 15 objects available, which again is puny. You guys are going to have thousands of times that in your sites to go ahead and migrate over. So it's a very, very small environment in mine. And notice that we remove the client section. We don't show you anything about clients. That's because this is 2012 SP1 to SP1. It's the same client version. So there's no need to worry about migrating clients. There's nothing to migrate. The clients are already running the proper version. If this was a 2007 site, we'd have clients here, and in my demo images I use like an MMS, I have 3 clients in there. The tree is, it has 3 clients that are remaining, total object, total clients free. You can see that. But this is the same version. We filter that out. Okay, so now, if you expand the migration node, click on source hierarchy, this will let you see some more details about that source infrastructure you have. We go to properties, you'll see that by default, we're going to redo that data gathering process every 4 hours. And the reason for that is, it's not a instantaneous migration. You don't just say, hey, migrate over here, and it's done in an hour. It's going to take you days, at a minimum, weeks for most people. Some people can be months to do a complete migration over. To get all your objects migrated over, everything recreated you wanted to, get all your clients upgraded, get all your DPs upgraded, and so on. That's going to be a period of time. So in the meantime, you got to keep monitoring and managing those clients in this 2007 environment. So you're going to make changes, create new clients, create new objects. And this data gathering process is going to, every so often, go re-query to find all the new objects you've created. So we can keep track of them over here, so you can make sure you are able to migrate what you need to migrate over. You can see that right below that there's a button that says Gather Data Now. So if I know I just went over there and created a bunch of collections and packages and advertisements, and I don't want to wait, I want to do migration right now, I can say Gather Data right now, force it to redo its work. And you can change that if you don't want it to be every 4 hours, you can change it from 1 hour to 24 hours. You go ahead and configure that. Not exactly how you want it, but give you a little more flexibility. Okay, then down at the very bottom of the preview pane, we have this tab called Shared DPs. If you go click on it, let me go ahead and bring this up a little bit higher for you. It will show you all the distribution points you have in your source site, what site they're attached to. This might be the simple site, not a child primary site, or a secondary site, here are the site codes. What type of DP it is, branch DP versus a standard DP, server share DP, we support all those. And this column, if I scroll over, it says eligible for upgrade, and mine says no. Is that a DP that we can upgrade from ConfigMan 2007 to ConfigMan 2012? In this case, it's no, because it's already 2012 SP1 DP, so there's nothing to upgrade about. Generally, the reasons for non-upgradability from a 2007 environment would be the DP has other roles co-located with it. We can't upgrade a DP that has any of the roles associated with it. For example, a Pixie service point. So if you have a DP that's also hosting Pixie for OSD, we can't upgrade it. You got to remove the Pixie role. So if it's a DP that's co-located with other roles, it's going to say no. It'll also say no if there's not enough disk space. So you guys all know the SMS PHE $C$ share that we use for packages. And when we create a package, we create that folder and dump all the code in there that you want. Well, we have to take those packages and we have to convert them over to the content library. So that's roughly twice the disk space. So we take the package, we leave them in the old package share format, and then we migrate them over to the content library. So you get two different versions of that content there. So we have to make sure you have enough disk space for that. And we'll show you that on the DP upgrade scenario. So that's one of the reasons why it's best to go to SP1 first, because with SP1, once you take any hosted migrated packages, so I've migrated a dozen packages from 2007 to 2012 and shared DPs. Once I then do an upgrade to that DP, we'll actually remove those hosted packages from the old SMS PKG $C$ share. So we'll clean up the disk space. We'll leave all your other stuff that didn't get migrated over into the old share, but we'll just remove the stuff that we did migrate. RTM, we don't do that. We leave the source version and the destination version, so the old version new. That's why it takes a lot of disk space. So that's primarily the reasons why we say eligible for upgrade, no. Co-located, not enough disk space. You also, if you want to migrate branch DPs over, branch DPs, you have to uninstall the Configuration Manager client, the 2007 client agent on the branch DP. So we can't have a 2007 client running on a 2012 site system. And we're going to take that branch DP and make it a 2012 DP. So we can't have a 2007 client there. And then one more thing on branch DPs, if you want to migrate those, or upgrade those as we call it, it has to be running a supported operating system. So if you're running Windows XP, Service Pack 3 as branch DPs, you can't migrate those or upgrade those to 2012. We don't support the DP role on a Windows XP box. We support Windows XP as a client, but not as a distribution point. So realistically, it means Windows Vista SP2, which we know how many people install that, both of you. So realistically, it's Windows 7. So take your branch DPs in 2007, upgrade them to Windows 7, and then you can go ahead and upgrade them to ConfigMan 2012 DPs. So you can track that here. All right. Okay, so now I've got this set of objects that I went ahead and discovered by that data gathering process. All it did was just fill up one table in our destination database of all these migration objects. It doesn't create anything other than just begin populating one table of discovered data. So now we want to start transferring objects from your source site over your target site. And this is a read-only operation, so we're not removing anything, it's actually recreating objects. So you do that through something called migration jobs. So you go to the migration jobs node, and you go ahead and click create migration jobs. You either do it from here or back where we were, you just click create migration job. And this is one place where it's different between a ConfigMan 2007 migration and a ConfigMan 2012 migration. Here you see I have two job types. We have object migration. Let me go ahead and take a package, an advertisement, a software update list, a task sequence, a whatever it is, configuration item. I want to take these objects and migrate them over, recreate them. And then second one is objects modified after migration. I went ahead and migrated a collection over. I went ahead and migrated a package over from 2007 to 2012. But my 2007 admin made a change to it, changed a rule, added a new program to package or whatever. So again, still being managed over here. It was migrated over here, but it's been changed. So now I want to migrate over objects that were changed in my source site. So I migrated that thing one time, I want to remigrate it over again. It's a different job type. Now, if my source site were a 2007 source site, I would have a third migration job type. And it would be collection migration. So there's a third job type in here for collection migration. You don't see it now because I'm already 2012 SP1 format. So my source site is a 2012 SP1. And our collections are in the same schema. 2007 collection scheme is completely different than 2012 collection schema. So we had a different migration job type specifically for collections. And so you take collections, it would show you a listing of all your 2007 collections, pick which ones you wanted, and it would show you all the objects that are associated with that collection. Here's all your DCM baselines. Here's all your advertisements. Here's all the packages related to those advertisements and so on. And you pick and choose which of those you want to get them migrated over. But since I'm already in 2012 SP1 format, a collection is just another object type. So it falls in here. So I don't have to do a collection migration. So we filtered that out just because we know the source site is 2012. But for those of you guys to be migrated to 2007, you have this one. That's where most customers start, is they start with doing collection migration. They take their collections of resources and move those over. That does not migrate the clients. All it does is just recreate the collection definition, its membership rules, and then lets you pick and choose the objects targeted to those collections to get them over so that when you move your clients over, when you upgrade them, and they populate those collections, they get all those same things advertised to them in essence. So they won't lose any functionality. So you're normally going to start here. In my case, I don't because I'm already running SP1, so I'll just do an object migration job. But you'll have those two different job types you'll run. And you will run both those, probably numerous of both those. You're not just going to create one migration job. You're going to create numerous different migration jobs at different times to migrate different collection types or migrate different objects that you want over for specific people. So that's the big change depending upon what your source is that one job type going away. So, oh, there we go, okay. So I'm going to go object migration, and I'll just say objects from ER2. Normally you go down here and type some description in there. These are objects migrated from primary site 2, blah, 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 blah. So that some other admin who looks in the console that has rights, they'll be able to see what that job's supposed to do. So you get some sort of descriptive text there. And I'm not going to embarrass myself with my typing. So now this pops up with just a flat listing of all the different types of objects that can be migrated across from Config-Man 2007 or Config-Man 2012 SP1, depending upon what my source site is. And you can just go and click all those different objects. Some of the new things that are available as of SP1, like @me virtual environments, they weren't there in RTM, and they certainly weren't there in 2007, so we couldn't migrate those. So that's something new. Automatic deployment rules, I don't think we migrated those before. And I can't scroll down, there's a couple more things down below. But you also see collections here. Collections, which if this is a 2007 site, you wouldn't see collections here because of the fact that it's a different schema, so it's a different job type. And it says 0 out of 0 because I don't have any unique collections over there that don't already exist in my target sites. So it won't let me migrate over any collections. But if I had any custom collections in my 2012 SP1 source site, they would appear there and I'd say 0 out of 1 or whatever it is. So in here, you pick one of these, like in this case, software distribution packages. It shows you in the available objects, it shows you all those packages you have available. I got 0 out of those 1 packages selected. If I want that one, I can go ahead and select it. If I don't want it, I don't have to select it. So I've got that flexibility. We show you the source site code and whether or not it's been migrated already or not. to give you all the information you need to make your decisions. Let's take that package. Let's take this application. You can also see saved searches, software metering rules, configuration items, boundaries and boundary groups. Boundary groups I know we didn't have before. But it says, okay, if you want to take that boundary group, hey, I have to take this boundary as well. This boundary group refers to this boundary. That boundary has to be migrated over. So we know the relationship between objects. So now when I click continue, it's going to go ahead and select that one boundary. That boundary is part of that boundary group that we're migrating over. So we do know the relationships of one object refers to another one. For example, in a 2007 migration, I picked an advertisement. It's going to go ahead and also automatically select the packages that the advertisement refers to in the program. So you just, as we call it, cherry pick. You cherry pick the items that you want to migrate across. You then click next. And then this wizard page is on content ownership. So, so what the content ownership is, I didn't even mark it on that. So it doesn't matter what my source is, and I'll say 2007, I've got a primary site, it's got a package, and that package is targeted to a DP, and there's source. There's some source files for that package that get sent on the DP. So my 2012 environment, maybe I have a CAS and two different primary sites. Maybe even a secondary site in there, something like that. So maybe I've got a hierarchy over 2012. You can migrate from a standalone primary into a hierarchy. You can migrate from a hierarchy into a standalone. You can migrate from a hierarchy to a hierarchy. We don't really have here. So I do a migration of this package. So I migrate that package over to my 2012 infrastructure. That just brings the definition of that package across, not the actual binaries. So we'll see the package name in here, the description of it, the programs, and so on over here. And then if I have shared DPs on, my client's sitting over here, and go with those source files from the 2007 DP. Well, now let's say I want to modify this package over here. And I need those source files. So I need these source files that are sitting over my 2007 infrastructure from somewhere. What this wizard page is saying is, from your 2012 source, your 2012 hierarchy, which of these sites have the two primaries, do you want to be the site that's going to own this content when you bring it across? In essence, it is which one of these three sites is physically the closest to those source files. Because that's the site that's going to reach across the network, grab those source files, bring them over to 2012. The actual definition gets replicated everywhere because it's global data. So when I migrate the package definition over, if I migrate to the CAS, it replicates down to PR1 and PR2 automatically. But the binaries, the source files, they don't come across until I do make some modification to it, or I go and say I want this package replicated to a 2012 DP that I need those source files. So which site server is going to go across my link, whatever network link I have, define those source files, bring them over here, then go ahead and distribute them to a 2012 DP. So you're going to pick whichever site you feel is physically closest to it. Or maybe in a hierarchy you want all packages created and owned by your CAS. You can certainly do that. That's what we're asking you for here. What site do you want to designate as your source site? And in my case, I only have one. I'm standalone, but in a hierarchy you drop down and you see all of your sites here that could own a package. It would be CAS and all your primers. Secondary couldn't own a package. So I'll take that one. The next thing is, and there's nothing here for us, but the next thing is, one more phrases so I keep them all over. So the next thing is, if you have any objects, and primarily collections, that specifically referred to as site code. So I have a collection, and that collection has a query rule, and that query rule says something, select star from SMS underscore system resource, where site code equals PR2. So it's a query-based collection rule targeting to my specific source site, by site code. Well, when you're setting up your two infrastructures here, this guy is site code PR2, this is site code MCM. You can't use the same site code when you're setting up two different infrastructures. And so you can't reuse PR2, you have to create a new site code. So what we tell you is this gives you the chance to fix all those site code mistakes that you made before. You have to recreate them. So PR2 is no longer be valid. When I migrate that collection over with its query to Former 2012, you can say all clients with site code equals PR2. That doesn't exist anymore. So that query is going to be empty. So we're telling you that you have a query based on an old site code that's no longer valid. So what site code do you want to replace it with? So to show me the collection name here, it showed me the source site code in my query, PR2, and then let me pick a site code here. It can be PR1, PR2, MCM, SCC, whatever I had it over in my infrastructure in 2012. So it just tells me that if I have any of those objects. And obviously I have none of those objects, it doesn't pop up with anything. But we do know that relationship. We know you have to make those changes if you have any of those. Okay, the next thing is security. In Config Man 2012, we have this new role-based administration facility to allow you to control who has access to which objects. And here we're saying what security scope is going to be defined for these objects that you're migrating over right now. This boundary group, this package, and this application. Any of those that support security scopes, what security scope are you designating? You probably have multiple security scopes. You probably want to set that up before you do this migration process. So you would see a security scope in here for Redmond, and you see a security scope for objects that are belong just in Houston. Or maybe you see one for Matthew, because he's my OSD dude. So you go ahead and have your security scopes here, and you pick whatever security scope if you want these specific objects you're migrating across to be assigned to. Because you may want to say, okay, Matthew's my OSD guy, I'm just going to create a migration job just to pick OSD objects. So my custom boot images, my task sequences, my driver packages, and so on. So get all those objects across so Matthew can start doing his OSD work. So I want to assign these objects specifically to Matthew. If you don't have those created, or you don't want to assign them, just leave them the default. Once you get them migrated across, then you go and make your changes and assign the individual security scopes. So very, very cool technology we have with that role-based administration. And again, there'll be a lab at MMS on implementing role-based administration. The scenario there will be separating your server dudes from your desktop dudes, all on one site. Because traditionally today in 2007, you don't do that. You have one primary site for your server dudes and one primary site for your desktop dudes, and a central site above them for consolidated reporting and patching and so on. But now you can put those all on one site. So class 3 sites into one, and still make it look like the server guys and the workstation guys have their own sites based on the role-based administration. Anyway, so I'll just go ahead and take the default. And then settings. We got a few different things here to chat about. First is, when does this migration job run?
This is the
Hello.
Queuing.
at extension 4814 is not available. You may leave them.
Okay. I didn't know what to call him or her. Anyway, so the default here is, on scheduling is create your migration job right now and run it. So finish the wizard, click next, click close, and then the migration job kicks off and does the migration of those 4 objects in our case, and assigns the security scope and the content ownership and so on. But you might also say, well, I'm the guy doing migration, and I just want to go ahead and create all my migration jobs right now, and I'll kick them off later on. So you choose the top option there of create them, but don't schedule them to run, don't run them automatically. Let me go to the console, pick the job I want, click run now, and force it to run when I want to. Or maybe I'm the dude that's doing this, and I want to say, you know, I'm going on vacation next week, and I want all this bad stuff to happen next week when I'm gone. So let me go ahead and create the migration job now and schedule it to run next week when I'm gone so that somebody else has to deal with it. Or more realistically, you can schedule it to run at night when there's fewer people on your network, fewer people impacting the server, so less impact on the wire. So create the job now and have it run later on, after hours. I'll have it run right now. Then, next section is, what happens if I try and migrate an object that already exists in my target, in my destination site? For example, all systems collection. Every site has an all systems collection. If I try and migrate that over from 2007 to 2012, what do I do? Is that what? The admin says to take the all system collection. It already exists in 2012. The default is don't migrate it over if the object exists in the target site. However, if that package is there and I made a change to the package, I want to overwrite it. So when you choose that other migration job, objects modified after migration, you automatically select that. So we know you're telling us to remigrate over objects that modified. So you want to overwrite that. And then lastly, at the very bottom is, if you had any organizational folders for packages and so on, bring those folders across to 2012 to keep the same folder structure that you had. If I was migrating over deployments, like I was in the 2007 environment, I picked a collection. That collection had an advertisement targeted to it. We have another checkbox down here to enable programs from packages. So by default, when you bring across a advertisement, the advertisement is disabled in 2012. So we bring across the collection, we bring across the package, we bring across the advertisement, which is now a deployment. The deployment would be disabled, which basically means the program on the advanced tab says disable this program on computer before it's advertised. So that it's not a valid advertisement, and the program can't run on 2012 clients. So the checkbox here lets you turn that on, and so it would be a valid advertisement for your 2012 infrastructure. Otherwise, you know, just go back and clear that option of the program, or enable the software update deployment. But that, you see that one of the checkboxes here if you're bringing across a deployment, which I'm not in this example. So, okay, I'll go ahead and take the defaults for all these. Summary says what you're going to do. You let us go ahead and create the migration. You see the migration job created here. If you go down to the bottom, it says it's not, it's going to start fairly shortly. There goes, it's running already. Go to the bottom of the tab called Objects and Job. If you click it, it shows you what the status of that migration job is. This one package has already been migrated over. This application's in the process of being migrated, and then the boundary and boundary group are next in line to get migrated over. Anyway, you can track this to see what the status is of your migration job, and when things are completed. You certainly don't have to sit here and watch it. You may, again, be running this over after hours, and you just come into work the next day and you do a refresh of your console, and you would see it says it's completed, and everything worked fine. If you want to track it a couple different ways, you can look here. You can go to the migration dashboard, and now you'll see under object migration that you had a total of 15 objects, 4 have been migrated, 11 are remaining. So it gives you a running scorecard of where you are and what objects and how many have been migrated across. That's one way. You could also obviously look at the migration job. You can go to reporting. So if you go to reporting and then reports, we have 5 reports, I think it is, on migration. Like migration jobs, just go ahead and run that report. SRS, unfortunately, is not the speediest. When you first launch off a report to run, that's down here retrieving parameter values. He's trying to figure out what parameters need to be prompted for and asked for in this report. Then it'll populate those, maybe with default values, and maybe it'll stop the report and make you supply the answers. And then once it's done that, which we should see momentarily, then it'll say rendering report if all the values have a default answer. So there's our parameters. And now it's rendering report. Now it's actually running the report, given those values, say, show me everything. And it's going to go ahead and populate our report and let us see what the results are. And this is the migration job, so you have one migration job, and you can drill into it and see all the objects got migrated by that migration job. So you can track it through reporting, you can track it through the console, the main dashboard, or your individual migration jobs. You can certainly go and look and see what objects got migrated over and that they appear in your site and so on. There we go. You can say it should be popping up here in a second. There's migration jobs, and you can see that under name, it's a link. So if I go just click the link, it'll then go ahead and show me objects in that job that got migrated, and whether or that were targeted for the migration, and whether or not they were successful in migrating. Now, you guys don't always want to give everybody that needs to use this type of data access to your console. So you can run this, even though I'm running from the console, you can run it through the web. So you can just give your manager, whoever needs to view this data, a URL to the reporting manager site, and they can run the reports from the internet instead of you having to give them access to the console. So anyway, you can view that as necessary for doing your tracking. So now you just go through and create all the different migration jobs you need to get all those objects migrated across that you want to get migrated over. Again, there's going to be certain objects that you're not going to care about anymore. They're old legacy packages that you don't need anymore, the DCM objects that, hey, I don't care about that, or it's an old OS information, or OSD, you don't need to have those. So you just go in and track, create all the migration jobs you need, get all your objects migrated across. When you get all your objects migrated across, then you want to go ahead and start migrating your clients. And you can migrate clients any way you want to. So however you want to upgrade your clients, go ahead and do so. What I would do is the software distribution scenario. You don't have as many options in 2007. So in my 2007 environment, I would go and create a package from definition, very much like I showed you in our upgrade scenario here. We have this package definition built into the 2007 environment, and just go ahead and point your 2007 package over to your 2012 site server source. So this would be from PR2, in my case, and I create a package that points to primary1 is my computer name, and then the SMS_MCM/client source files. I would go ahead and do that, and then on my package that I just created, again, that program, you want to go in and modify the program command line, and the command line is now going to point you to the upgraded site code. So you're going to take clients from your 2007 environment, create an advertisement for them to upgrade them to the 2012 binaries, the package source, and point them to the 2012 site server. So upgrade and reassign them to the new site server all with one advertisement. So get it all taken care of at one time. So just have this site point to those binaries, and your command line point to this site for assignment, and then you get all your clients migrated over. But again, you can use any method you want to, group policy and so on. Just make sure you're pointing them to the 2012 binaries and site server. Once you've got all your clients upgraded, and again, in a 2007 source environment, your dashboard will have this section down here in the lower right that's empty for us. Right in there, it will track for you how many clients you have, how many you've migrated over, and so on. Once you got all your clients migrated over, then the last thing you really worry about upgrading is your distribution points. So you can go back to your source hierarchy, you can go back to shared DPs, and then if your DP is available to migrate, you'll be able to choose the upgrade option. So just take your DPs and migrate those. What happens when you upgrade a DP is it's going to take that DP from 2007, it's going to uninstall it as a 2007 DP, including branch DPs, keep the content in the SMSPKG, C$, or whatever folder, install the 2012 binaries, including IIS, and then add it to, as a site system, to your 2012 site. It's going to keep your content intact. You don't have to redistribute any content across the wire to this DP. So keep all that content there. So it's going to uninstall the old code and install the new code. This is the one place where we're going to touch the BigMan 2007 database because of the fact that you're uninstalling this guy, so it removes it as a site system from the 2007 site. So we don't do that. BigMan 2007 will do that. When it gets uninstalled, it'll go ahead and remove it from the database. That's the only really place where we do any modification to the 2007 infrastructure. Everything else is read-only. We're just recreating stuff that exists over here.
As the conversion of the packages?
It will then do a conversion of the packages from the, and I can't really show you this because I have a package share really, but it's going to go ahead and convert from this folder here, which again, I don't have anything in there because we don't use it by default in 2012. It's going to take all your content that's sitting here that you have migrated. So the packages you've migrated across, it'll take those and convert them from this old format to the new format, which then puts them in here. Single instance store, content validation, and all the cool things we do with that. With SP1 one, we'll remove the content from here that's migrated and put it up here. With RCM, we leave it here, and it's converted over here. So you got it in both places. So that's again the reason why you want to be doing the migration to SP1, so we clean this up for you. But again, 2012, we don't use that by default unless you enable it. So, but you're all familiar with the package format that sits into that share as well. So there's that. So you get all your DPs upgraded that you want to upgrade. The last scenario for upgrade is secondary sites. So again, my 2007 environment, I have a central site, primary 1, primary 2. And I have a secondary site sitting down here below this guy. And here's my 2012 infrastructure. We have no direct upgrade of a secondary site. So you can't take a 2007 secondary site and get a 2012 secondary site. We don't upgrade or migrate sites. We migrate clients, objects, and distribution points. But what you could do is, if I want to keep that same type of environment, so if it has, and then new site codes, and if I really needed to have this secondary site in this, whatever this remote location was, and I want to keep all that content on the DP, I now set up a brand new 2012 secondary site, so I'm doing all this stuff manually. Now when I go through the migration process, I pick this secondary site server DP from this list, which we will show you. This is a shared DP. It'll have a secondary site server on it, and you do an upgrade of it. What that upgrade will do then is uninstall the secondary site server. Install the config manager 2007 code running on this guy. It'll keep your content on the distribution point. We'll then ask you what site you want to attach this new DP to, and you'll point it to that brand new secondary site server you have. So that will take this 2007 secondary site with a DP, keep the DP with all its content, allow you to put it in the secondary site in that remote location you want, keeping all the content intact. So if we uninstall it, we pause until your next data gathering process. We need to do that to verify that the secondary site server and all of the roles have been uninstalled. And then once you do the data gathering process, we validate that. Then we go ahead and do the upgrade of this guy and then put it down there. Now, when you upgrade a DP or when you install a DP, we're going to go ahead and walk you through a wizard that looks very much like this. I'm going to go ahead and create a site system server. I'll call it client 1. And then here's your site code. So you can pick and choose which of these site codes you wanted to. You can pick SE2 if you want to keep that DP in the same location where it was. Pick the site code you want to assign it to, and then just the one there. Or that. There we go. We'd automatically pick the DP role for you. And then it's, do you need to have IS in there, which we do. So you always take a checkbox, allow configuration manager to install and configure IS. Pick which protocol you need for that DP, HTTP or HTTPS, what certificate type you want to utilize for it. So answer those questions. Then today you guys use that no SMS on drive.sms file, the root of a drive prevents from putting a DP there. You don't have to do that anymore, because now you can go ahead and designate the drive you want us to use for your distribution point. The default is automatic. We'll go ahead and pick one. So if you want to control it, what you would do is go here and say, I want you to use drive K for your primary drive. If that one fills up, then go ahead and choose another drive. So we'll start with using drive K, and then we'll use all of drive K. Oops, one of my error going the other way, sorry. That way. Until we're down to 50 megabytes free disk space on drive K. Then we'll go ahead and switch over to drive I as a secondary drive. Now, both those get filled up to 50 gigabytes. Then we do our own selection. So then we go ahead and pick which drive we want to use. So that's where you might want to have the no SMS on drive, .sms file out, prevent it from picking your C drive or whatever. So you go ahead and pick whichever one of those you want to, and your disk space considerations. Now, a new type of site system role we'll talk about later on called whole DP. So I'll hold on to that. but that's brand new for SP1. I'll talk about that when I finish this section. Is this going to be a Pixie-enabled DP? Fine if it's a server-based OS, not if it's a workstation OS. Same thing for multicast, server-based OS that supports it, not workstations. You want content validation enabled by default. It's not there by default, but if you do, then on a scheduled basis, we'll go out there and validate the package files on your DP to make sure that there's been no corruption of them, hashes and everything's good. And then what boundary groups do you want to add this DP to? So what boundary groups so that clients can go ahead and access this DP for any content. So just walk through that wizard, and then that will go through the process of uninstalling the 2007 DP and installing the 2012 DP and getting it assigned to the appropriate site code. So fairly simple process. Now, once you've got all your objects migrated, all your clients migrated, and lastly, all your secondary sites/DPs migrated over, you're all done with migration for this source anyway. So then what you would do is you want to clean up your dashboard. So you want to get rid of the source hierarchy here. You want to get rid of all your migration jobs. You want to clean up your migration dashboard. So what you would do there is you would first click the Stop Gathering Data. So that pops up a message box saying, do you really want to do that? Then we're not going to let you know about any newer changed objects, and no more shared DPs are available. So say, okay, that's fine. I don't want that anymore because I'm done with that source. It's all empty as far as what I'm concerned. All the stuff's still there, but as far as what I need, it's gone. So now we go ahead and say, credentials configured? No. So that means we're no longer doing the data gathering process. You're not going to do that 4-hour cycle of going querying for new stuff. Now you want to go ahead and get rid of all the references to this old site. So then you can do a cleanup migration data. So the dashboard, you can see here we already cleared out the objects. You're not gathering data anymore, so we don't know anything, but we got this information about your primary site. And your migration jobs, see the old migration jobs there. I want to clean up all that stuff too. So I go here to clean up migration data. And that says, are you sure you want to clean up migration data? That's going to remove all references to site TR2. So any references you had in your 2012 database to those migration objects from 2007 data site are going to be removed. Any objects migrated over remain. It's just that the migration tables that keep track of. We're going to clean those guys out. So I say, yes, I want to do that. And it confirms that you want to do that. And you say, yes, and bingo, your source hierarchy is gone, your migration jobs are gone, your migration dashboard is completely blank, and I can see you got the clients back there. And then if I try to go run a migration report, it'll all be empty. So I have no data there anymore. So it's just as if I never did any migration, other than the fact that any objects I migrated still remain. So all that stuff is there. It just took all the good stuff I wanted, brought it down here, and lost all the references to that guy. Now you just go decommission this old infrastructure. You don't need it anymore. You're not managing it anymore. You got everything you need over here in your new site and hierarchy. So you go ahead and do that cleanup process over there, and now maybe you have another 2007 infrastructure you have. Maybe you had multiple different sites. So maybe you did have a standalone server site and a standalone workstation site. They didn't have a simple site above them. So maybe you did migration from the server side already. You clean him up. Then you go ahead and do migration from the workstation site and migrate everything. Then you clean him up. So you go ahead and create a brand new migration infrastructure there as far as the pointing to source hierarchy and migration jobs and so on. Just go out there and recreate this migration stuff as much as you need to get all of the objects you had in 2007 moved that you want over to 2012 infrastructure. Well, there's something else I was going to say, which I just lost it. You guys asked too many questions, so I lost my train of thought.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
What about the prereqs, say from 2007 to 2012 SP1, and you need .NET, you need all this stuff installed, and it's not on there. Have you seen some hiccups as far as the installation goes?
So that's really the client stuff you're talking about. The biggest hiccup we've seen is that Config-Man 2007 doesn't require .NET at all. Config-Man 2012 RTM requires a minimum of .NET Framework 3.0 on clients, and SP1 requires a minimum of .NET 3.5. If .NET is not there, we're going to install .NET 4.0 for you automatically. You probably don't want us installing it, not because we do anything bad, just that .NET, it takes a long time to install. It's like a 10, 15-minute install, and it requires a reboot after the installation of .NET. Now, if we install it as part of our client setup, we suppress the reboot. But if you have reduced client functionality, because .NET's not working until you reboot. So the best thing to do is to pre-deploy today .NET, whatever version you want in your infrastructure, pre-deploy today, so that by the time you get to your migration process, you will have rebooted all your clients through the patching and so on. So pre-deploy that, and then the migration upgrade process is pretty darn smooth. In my, like the thing I do at MMS, in my 2007 Windows XP client, I don't have .NET there, and so I demonstrate the fact, okay, now we're sitting here, kick off the client upgrade process, and then all of a sudden I go check everyone's, oh, now you can see .NET framework is being installed right now. And it doesn't complete by the time we in the lab, just to show them the pain of .NET. So pre-deploy your .NET stuff, and then you should be in pretty good shape with it. The other thing, and I just remember what I was going to show you, the other thing that's very cool in the migration process is when you migrate over packages that clients access. So here's my package I migrated across, PR2 package. The other ones were ones I created myself. If you go all the way over to the right, it's the package ID. Notice that when we recreate that package in the new site, we don't give it the new site code, we keep the old package ID. That's because of the fact you don't want your clients to rerun that package advertisement again. So we keep the same IDs for any deployment objects, so they don't get rerun on clients if you don't want them to. So we do keep that over there. So it'll be a little bit of a disconnect if you're going through and looking at your objects and, hey, wait a minute, why is that PR2 thing there and on my side is MCM? But it's because we just kept that for the client execution history so clients don't rerun their advertisements if you bring them across. And what I was talking about on the deployment is if you go look at your program, what we would do automatically on the programs on the advanced tab is this checkbox would be selected. Disable program on computers where it's being deployed. So when you're bringing across advertisements from 2007, the default selection is to disable them, and so this checkbox would be enabled automatically. The other important thing on the upgrade or the migration process, which I didn't really get, is your software update point. In order for you to migrate over any software update items, we don't migrate the metadata. We only migrate your update list, your deployments, your deployment packages, those type of things, your templates. Is that in order to migrate over any software update stuff, your target site has to have a software update point configured on it, obviously, and it has to be configured in essence the same way with the same metadata. So in essence, this means if your stuff down here syncs from Microsoft Update, configure this stuff to sync from Microsoft Update, and make sure both are synced so they have the same patch metadata on it. So we can't migrate over objects if the metadata is not there for that object. So you won't have those available to you. So just make sure your software update points are set up successfully both sides, and they are synchronizing successfully. Then you can go ahead and migrate over your update list, update groups, and your deployments, version deployment packages, software update, your templates that you have, and you can migrate all those over. That's another key thing to do on your migration process. In 2007, if you have any AppD packages, virtual application packages in Figma 2007, we don't support those in 2012. So what we do is we take your virtual application package from 2007 and we recreate it as an application in 2012 with an AppD deployment. Because we support virtual applications in a different format in 2012. So we recreate those, but your packages come across as packages for the most part. So physical packages come over as physical packages. Now we have a utility if you want to move from the package program format to the new application model. We have a utility called the Package Conversion Manager. The Package Conversion Manager utility that Microsoft IT wrote to take all these packages that you converted over, migrated over, and convert them over to the application model. Because the application model is state-based, it has requirement rules and dependencies, simulated deployments, a lot of cool things with the application model that you don't get with packages and programs. Do that tool to help convert things over for you. And it'll do an analysis and assessment on your package infrastructure to see which ones can easily and effectively be converted over to applications. So try and make it easy for you. So as a general rule, we can migrate over everything for your infrastructure for you. So we did migrate over boundaries. If we go up here, you'll see we migrated over the boundaries. Here's my PR2 systems. It actually appears twice, once for shared DP. So when you enable shared DPs, we need boundaries, so we can go ahead and migrate those across. And then once for the actual boundary migrations that I did. Because of that, we create boundary group. And here's a boundary group we create for your environment. So that you can go ahead and have your distribution points listed in there for content. So you migrate over those. We don't migrate over, you can import your SMS def mod file. We don't have an SMS def mod file anymore in Big Band 2012. The physical file has gone away. Now what we use is a database definition to send through policy now. And so the physical file's gone away, but you can import your old Figman 2007 SMS def mod file into the new database modification that we use. So what you would do there is go to your 2012 site, go to client settings, go to default client settings, properties, and here's what you guys know in 2007 is all your client agents. So here's all the hardware inventory client agent, software inventory client agent, software metering client agent, advertised program client agent, et cetera. They're all in one UI now. So what you do now, when you go to hardware inventory, you would go here to set classes. Then here's your representation of your SMS def mod. So it's done now through a user interface. And if you want to import your old one that you spent time and investment in 2007, you want to lose all that, you go down here to the import option. And then you go ahead and point it to your config-man 2007 SMS def mod, and it will migrate over your customizations into our core template here. And you can turn on, turn off, whatever you want is appropriate. So you can migrate that across, you don't lose that investment. But the big things that we don't migrate across for you are queries. So any queries you've created, so over here in the monitoring workspace now, any queries here we don't migrate. And the reason being, in 2007, we already had this option for export queries. So you take a query, you can export it, and what that will do, it'll dump it into a MOF file format, and you can just import that MOF file directly into 2012. Just go take your queries you have in 2007, export them if you want them, bring them over. Now, if the query is in a collection like we talked about before, we do obviously migrate the collection version of that query, but not the actual query version. So we don't migrate those. We don't migrate over reports. So if you have reports in 2007 that you want to keep, we don't bring those across for you. Now, all of your built-in reports, we automatically bring across. And I forget the last version I looked at, Figman 2007, SR3 was something like 383 reports, something like that. We have, in SP1, I click here, it's 462, I think it is, when it enumerates all the reports. So we've already taken all your default reports from Figman 2007 and recreated them into SRS. So what you'd really be worried about is any custom reports you created. And when we polled our TAP customers and so on, we found that the vast majority of our TAP customers had well less than 100 custom reports. So it's pretty simple to go ahead and get those across. So what you would do is, actually in 2007, you would make sure that you're running R2 or R3 for Figman 2007, and then you would add an SRS RP, so a reporting services point. So install SRS in your 2007 environment. R2 and R3 allows you to create a reporting services point in Figman 2007. So now you have a reporting point, the classic web-based reporting, and then your reporting services point in 2007. When you do that, there's a wizard in our console called the Copy Reports Wizard. Run the Copy Reports Wizard, take all those custom reports you have, and have us convert them over or recreate them as SRS reports. So now you got all your reports that you want in SRS format in 2007. In SRS, then you just go ahead and do an export. So SRS just lets you do a direct export to do an export from SRS into RDL format. So export those reports from SRS in 2007 into RDL format, and that's report definition language, and you just directly take those RDL files and import them into your 2012 SRS box. Just import those RDL files, and you got all the reports that you need migrated over. So we just don't automate that process for you, but you can easily do that. So it's queries we don't migrate, it's reports we don't migrate, and the other thing people have questioned that why don't we migrate is security rights. So you spend a lot of time in your 2007 environment creating those class and instance security rights to control who can do what in your admin console, and we don't migrate those across. And believe me, you don't want that old stuff that you did. The role-based administration is so much easier and more effective in 2012 than the class and instance security rights. It'd just be way too hard for us to try and map those over. So what you would do now is in 2012, you just go here and it is 462 reports that we have in SP1. I believe it was 423, I think was the number in RTL. But anyway, and in Config Man 2012, you just go down to the security node in administration, and you go ahead and we already have this list of templates for you. And we have 14 templates already built in. So these are basically what you guys would do with the class security rights in 2007. You try and figure out what rights I need to be able to do operating system deployment and try and create those class rights that you need. We've already done that for you. So you just would take administrators you want to use, assign them the appropriate security roles. You go ahead and create the appropriate security scopes that you want for locations, for job types, for specific people, whatever it is. You go ahead and create your appropriate security scopes you want. And then you make sure you have the collections created you want. Then you just go to administrative users, go add user or group, and you can browse Active Directory, desktop admin. We'll bring him over. You add him to the appropriate security roles you want. He's just going to be able to do application administration. You then go ahead and figure out which collections you want him to have access to. I don't want any of the default stuff, so he's going to be security scope. He's here in Houston, so that's the only thing he sees, objects tagged for Houston. And you've got to be able to deploy software, so I'll give him the whatever collection, either I'm doing user targeting or system targeting, and I'll go and let him, he can only deploy to Windows 8 clients. So go ahead and assign the roles to the user or AD group, assign the security roles, security scopes, and the appropriate collections, and bingo, we do all the hard work for you. You don't have to figure out class rights or instance security rights. It's so much easier now. So those are the three big things we don't bring across for you in the migration process. Everything else we pretty well handle for you. And of course, you have to do client upgrades, migration on your own. More questions?
I got one. At what point do you change your AD pointers for everything? Is it your AD objects for your SDK in 2007?
Okay, so at what point do we clean up Active Directory and change things over? So, we've done a couple of things to help you out in Config Man 2012. One is that we still have the concept of boundaries. So Config Man 2012 still has boundaries, and the same four types of boundaries: IP subnets, IP address ranges, IPv6 prefixes, and Active Directory sites. So you go ahead and add in all the appropriate boundaries you want based on how you want to manage your environment. But boundaries do nothing for you in Config Man 2012 by themselves. So one of my CAP customers over in New York, we had this new discovery method called Active Directory Force Discovery, where we would go through and discover Active Directory sites and IP subnets from Active Directory. And when we ran this for Config Man 2012, the beta, we first added this discovery method. They found out that they had, I want to say it was 46 Active Directory sites. Not a big deal. But they had 56,384 IP subnets in AD. They didn't know they had that many. So we created 56,384 subnets and boundaries. Again, no big deal, other than the fact that we couldn't even display them all back then. We had a limitation of 5,000 objects, so I couldn't see everything. and it just clog up the UI and clog up the database. So boundaries aren't used until you put them in a boundary group. So this is a new concept from 2007, and the purpose of the boundary group is twofold. So I have, here's the boundary group, the one I migrated. If I go look at its properties. So you add boundaries to boundary groups. So this boundary group says all clients in this IP address range. Now, what is the boundary group used for? That's on the References tab. The References tab says this boundary group is used for either site assignment, which is this guy right here, or down at the bottom is site system selection, content lookup. So to help with that transition phase between 2007 and 2012, what you would do is create boundary groups and only add in your distribution points for content lookup, but not do site assignment. So don't select this checkbox. That way you can have the same boundary used in 2007, and the boundaries in 2007 are always used for content lookup and site assignment. And that boundary can exist in 2012 in a boundary group, but it's only used for content lookup, so finding a distribution point, but not doing for site assignment. That way a client wouldn't get assigned to the 2012 site. You'd have to manually say SMS site code equals whatever, and you would have less concern because of the fact that it wouldn't be overlapping boundaries for site assignment. But so my general philosophy is keep the boundary in 2007, manually assign your clients in 2012 until you get all those clients in that boundary moved over, then remove it from 2007, enable it in 2012 in a boundary group for site assignment. And again, the site assignment, all this does, that checkbox, you then designate what sites you want these clients assigned to. All that does is, if I do AD system discovery, I can automatically say config manager assigned site equals, and that helps for automated client push. So we don't let 2012 clients be assigned to a 2007 site. So you can't get a 2012 client assigned accidentally to a 2007 site. And it's not even supposed to talk really to a 2007 management point. So it should get all of its policies and do its reporting stuff to 2012 infrastructure. Now 2007 clients could get assigned to 2012 theoretically and have some issues there, but so you just don't turn on the site assignment to clean that up. Now, one of my top customers, what they did, the same guys in New York, is they left all their boundaries in 2007, put 0 boundaries in 2012. And again, they could have put boundaries, just not put them in boundary groups. And with that case, so they had their boundary group, in essence, would have been blank. So boundaries could have been in it, but no boundary groups, which means clients can't find DPs, and clients can't be assigned to the site automatically. So all they had to do is, in all their software deployments, they just had to state that it was a slow network boundary. So whenever you do a deployment, we always had the option, what happens in a fast boundary, what happens in a slow boundary. They just had to remember to designate the option for a slow network boundary. And if you're not, if clients are not in a boundary group, with a DP, it's considered a slow connection. So they just had to make sure their deployments all enabled the slow connection environment. And then that worked straight for them. Once they remember to do that, they'd always forget, and their deployment wouldn't work. They go back there and select the option there to slow network boundaries download for execute. And then bingo, all the deployments work fine.
Do you need to clean anything on the system container, maybe?
Once you're all done with your config man 2007 environment, I absolutely would. We do not clean that up. So you absolutely should go back there and clean that up. Again, one of my top customers, they had not cleaned that up for years, and they're having problems with clients being assigned to sites. And they went back and looked at it. I said, well, let's go look at AD and see what you have there. They had these sites that had not been up and running for years, because we don't clean up AD when we uninstall a site. So absolutely, you should go to your system management container and get rid of anything that's not valid anymore. Absolutely should do that. Because again, we do that's been something that's been requested a lot, and we keep saying, yeah, we'll do that, and that time frame never comes around. So go to system management and clean up anything there that's dead, not active. You can clean up everything if you want to, and we'll republish the stuff that's really actively publishing now. So that'll happen within an hour. So it's not going to kill you, certainly not long term, if you just delete everything in the system management container. But yes, when you decommission a site, you always want to go and clean up the system management container, because we don't report it. I know, we should, but we don't. That's a kind of a pain point. Other questions you got on migration? We just stall until lunch is ready. Just a couple more minutes, I'm sure.
The patch that you said that you download if we downloaded configuration manager binary, does that patch also need to be applied for any other components like operations manager or any other?
No, that's a configuration manager patch. The 280.1987 is the config manager one. Now the security advisory. The Windows Security Advisory, that may be applicable for other things. So it's actually a Windows bug. So you should get that Security Advisory and install it. And if you had done that, then we would have never even issued an Arcsoft. That's one way you could prevent it. But no, it's not needed for anything else that I know of outside of just pure Windows stuff. I don't know Operations Manager. I'm a big man guy, so I don't know if they have any certificate-based stuff that might have been exposed by that as well. Okay, well, we got a couple more minutes. We'll get lunch ready. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the lights. I'm going to be done one here for a moment. Okay. Watch your eyes. The lights are going on.
Project standard first. Push down to the
I was going to say. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull the screen up so I can write better on there. So, for the most part, all of your site systems are the same between 2007 and 2012, very, very similar. So, new site systems in 2012, you have a couple of application catalog roles, which I guess I could show this online, but application catalog, that's specifically going to do the end user portal for software distribution. So we have two roles for it. The reporting services point, that's new, but again, you have that with the R2 and R3 of Config 2012. That's for SRS reporting. And that's the only way we do reporting now. So it's advantageous for you to start playing around with SRS today, 2007, if you're still there, so you're familiar with it. We have Endpoint Protection. And it's point. We have an Endpoint Protection point. I'll show you that after lunch. I'll go ahead and install it and show you what that does for our endpoint protection scenario. I want to use that for my real-time actions. So endpoint protection point. We also have, so on distribution point, which is really where I was going here. So on the distribution point, we have a couple of different things now. So we have a couple different types of DPs. We have a cloud DP, and this is SP1. And then we have a pole DP. We still have DP, but we only have one type of DP really, and that's just a DP, there's no more branch. So branch DPs have gone away. You can still put a DP on a workstation OS if you want to, but it's not a client-based, your client does the pulling of content. It's done just by site server pushing. No more branch DP, but it does work on a client workstation, Vista, SP2 Plus. But now in Service Pack 1, we have two new types of DPs. One of them is a cloud DP. So if you have an environment where you want to have content stored up in the cloud, Windows Azure, as a fallback method of clients to gain access to those DPs, the content in the cloud, you can go ahead and set up a cloud DP. So you have to have a Windows Azure subscription, and then you designate for us the region in the world you want that DP to be hosted. You can't say Houston, Texas, but you would say Central United States. And then somewhere in the Central United States, we would host a distribution point for you. So instead of you having to have the physical box, get the OS on it, and put all your content there and manage it locally, we'll do it for you from the cloud. You tell us how much disk space you want to store on the cloud-based DP. How many gigabytes you want to consume. You tell us how much on a monthly basis you want to have downloaded from the web down to your infrastructure. And then there's an option in the console where you designate which clients can utilize or access a cloud-based VP. And as far as you're concerned, this looks like, it acts just like any other distribution point. I got content, I say put this content on that VP, and then we just replicate it up to the cloud for you. And when clients do content location, they'll first get a list of local VPs, so VPs that went to the boundary group of for content lookup. I'll get a list of remote VPs, you kind of like fallback VPs, or slow network VPs, you have that. And then lastly, if enabled, cloud VPs. You can have multiple. And this is if enabled, it's a client setting to control whether or not a client can utilize a cloud VP. So we're always going to try and find a local intranet-based VP first, whether it's a local one or a remote one for me, fast or slow connection. And then, if I'm allowed, I'll go up to the cloud and access the VP. And what we support on cloud VPs is software distribution. So packages and apps. We don't support OSD. We are actually working on supporting OSD over the internet, but today we don't. And you really want to, obviously, you want to be very careful with that. You still do OSD over the internet, but do you really want to have clients downloading your 60 gigabyte WIM file from a cloud-based VP and getting a very large bill at the end of the month for downloads? So probably not. I know somebody in Europe, his WIM file is 65 gigabytes of size. I believe it. You can talk to him if you want to. You probably know who it is.
Yeah, I think that's that hard.
He manages a university, and so he has one WIM file that has a bunch of different images in it. And he just deploys the appropriate image from that WIM file to the appropriate classroom he needs to. So you probably don't want that posted up on Azure and then downloaded over the network. So we don't support it today for app sequences and OSD, and we don't support it for software updates. So we don't support you going to putting patches up there and clients getting patches from a cloud-based VP. And the reason we don't is, where do patches come from originally, the content? Where they come from Microsoft Update. They're already coming up in the cloud, right? You got Microsoft Update up here up in the cloud. In Service Pack 1, a new feature we've added is, I got an intranet, intranet client. And normally my intranet client for patching is going to go find a on-premise VP. But we added a new feature in SP1 that says, if a client can't find content in a local VP, allow that client to fall back to getting content from Move automatically. So why would we charge you to patch it to you for free, host them up on a cloud-based VP, and charge you for downloading them? So we don't support them for software updates either, because this is a brand new feature for SP1. Internet VPs, internet clients fall back to Move to get their patches. You're still controlling them through your process of patch distribution, the policy. They say, if I can't find it on the VP, then they go up here and find it. Just so that's control. So we don't support these features on the cloud-based VP, but software distribution, packages, and applications. It is encrypted. The content's encrypted up here. You have to specify, along with your subscription ID, you have to specify a certificate that your clients would then have to go ahead and access your cloud-based VP for authentication, so you can make sure that no other companies are accessing your VP content and so on. So there's that. Now the full VP is, switch color. So what the full VP scenario is I've got headquarters up here, and I've got my primary site, and that has a VP there, and X number of VPs. And I've got this remote location over here, over some WAN link to the remote office. And today, in 2007, you guys probably make that a secondary site, so you have a VP here, and so control the replication and content from the site server down to that secondary site server using our sensors. So throttling and bandwidth control, scheduling, and so on. Well, in 2012, you no longer have to do that. So 2012, no secondary, just put a VP in this remote location. Because now, when your site server wants to push content, we have schedule and throttling. So you control when that site server pushes that content down to that remote DP, just like it was for a secondary site. So you can just put a DP there. Okay, so that's fine. Now, SP1, let's say I have to have 3 DPs out there. This is a big enough location, and I want to have 3 DPs out in this small location. In RTM, that's 3 different pushes. Push the 1 DP, push the 2nd DP, push the 3rd DP. With SP1, what you can do now is primary site, push, 1 DP, and then your other 2 DPs can do a pull. So you can say this DP, you get this content from this guy. So you're pushing across that WAN link 1 time and hitting all 3 DPs eventually. So it's very much like a branch DP that you have in 2007, that the branch DP would download the content from another DP. You just said now it's using not client functionality, it's using the distribution management technology to go ahead and download the content from a configured DP as your source for another DP. Now the cool thing is, this download here is over bits instead of SMB. Our site server push is always over SMB. This pull is over bits. So you have the advantages of bits for the, the throttling capabilities and the drizzling down of content and so on. The other cool thing with this is that with the pull DPs, we're going to let you expand your number of DPs per site. And we don't have the numbers yet. I can't tell you what those numbers are. But for push DPs, it's 250 DPs per site. So that's one of the reasons that people still use secondary sites in remote locations. I can only have 250 DPs here, and I want some more DPs down here. So I put a secondary site down there, it can have another 250 DPs down there. Full DP, the site server's not pushing the content out there, it's just the remote DPs doing the pull action down. We're going to let you expand that number, not push DPs, but just full DPs on the site, just being full bits. And that will be, numbers will be forthcoming. The PM just did a blog on the cloud-based DPs. They got published last week. He said his next thing will be the full DPs. And I'm sure when he blogs this blog on the full DPs, they'll have into their scalability numbers for those. That's very cool. That can help you out in your remote WAN scenarios. So now, realistically, you don't have to have secondary sites unless you really want to manage the upward flow of your client data. So manage all these clients here, you want to manage the upwards WAN traffic, then use the secondary site, then your clients also know the data here, and then we use the sender to go ahead and push the data up there.
Will it make sense to use a secondary site right now for redundancy and resiliency purposes, like database replication and stuff?
No. Secondary site gives you nothing for that. Because in a secondary site, stuff going down from the primary to the secondary is over SQL, but stuff going back up is file-based. So you would never go down and recover something from a secondary site.
So how would you deal with redundancy, at distribution point, local remote offices or whatever, if you wanted to, say the primary site got shut down, but you still wanted clients to be able to pull content or whatever, still get those instructions, how would you go about that?
Okay, so what you can do is, you can input multiple management points per site. So what you may want to do, what you can do is have your primary site sitting up here with an MP, DP, SQL, et cetera, remote location down here. You can put a MP, DP, and now with SP1, you can also put a software update point out remote location. So now if the link gets severed, or the site goes down, whatever, clients sitting here can still pull policies from their management point that's local. Now, this management point here, it has 2 choices. It's got to go get the SQL server, which if the link's down, can't do it. But if the SQL server, if you still have the SQL server, it can do a query to the SQL server saying, hey, yeah, client, here's your advertisement or deployment, and by the way, here's your DP that you want for content location to get it from. If the link is completely down, then what you do is a SQL replica on the MP. So if you're really concerned about redundancy, put a SQL replica down here. And every so often, SQL Server will do replication of appropriate data from the site database down to the pseudo site database down here. And if your link goes down, I can still get whatever I have been replicated down. So using the multiple management point scenario in 2012, and now with SP1, you can have up to 8 software update points per site. So you can put them in real core scenarios if you need to.
The full DP, can you reassign which DP goes
Yes.
to get
Yeah. So if I go and turn unmute this, and then go back into my screen real quick, I dim the lights again so you can see better. And we'll just do this and we'll break for lunch. My stomach's growling, so. And you're probably hearing it on the mic and stuff, so apologize. So when you go to your site systems, and I'll go back in here and I'll create a new site system role real quick. Here's the right spot, line 1. Very good. Spelled correctly, line 1. I'm going to read it off on, I'm blind about having to get old. Okay, I go to my DP. Okay, so you enable full DP. It's a configuration option now. On DP, you don't have this in RTM, it's a brand new thing for SP1. Enable full DP, and then you go ahead and down at the bottom, you click Add, and then Add will let you point to which DP you want to pull from. So you go ahead and select whichever other DPs you have, which can be push-based DPs or pull-based DPs. If you want this DP to pull from, you can have multiple different sources. You can remove sources. You can change sources. You can change this guy from a push DP to a pull DP, from a pull DP back to a push DP. You have all those available options. You probably don't want to do a pull from a cloud-based DP. You probably want to keep it an on-premise DP as a pull source, but you just go ahead and configure those as you want for your sources. Now, as a general rule, this just uses the internal distribution point capability to go pull the content. 2 scenarios where that's different. One is if you're using HTTPS, so if you want to use SSL communications, then you have to have the configuration manager client on the DP, the pull DP, because we need the certificate to go to SSL validation to get to the source DP. And then secondly is if the DP and the one it's pulling from are 2 different ports without trust, then we need client there so you can use the network access account to go get the source from your pull source. So those would be the 2 scenarios where you need the client. We don't really use the client for doing the work. It's the client to get the certificate or to get the network access account. But other than that, it's the site server, or excuse me, the DP functionality that does the pulling of the content down. Okay, then we'll break for lunch. We'll come back and talk about other site system stuff and get into the other stuff we want to do after lunch. So.